mates, Gabe from Nexus Score here with another One Piece card game video. We're going to be continuing on with my analysis over all of the cards revealed for One Piece Set 3 Pillars of Strength. This time we are going to be going again in color sequential orders, looking over all the new green cards, and as you can immediately see, everything is themed after East Blue villains. So, I've already seen some of these cards before, but again, I like to go in as fresh as possible for these videos so we can all read them together. So, starting off with our first leader, it is going to be Captain Kuro. I think a pretty bold choice for the leader for East Blue. Uh, I mean, as you already saw, we have an Arlong leader for the multicolor, but I'm surprised they didn't do something like Krieg or even Morgan. So, but that's besides the point. So as you can see, he's pretty normal as far as leaders go, who is a 5 cost, 5 life monocolor. Active during the main phase, you can pay 3, rest 2 characters with the East Blue type, set this leader as active, and rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. So you can already immediately see the similarities between this card and Kid. I think one of the big make or breaks for this is going to be what the support looks like. I'm kind of inclined to say that this is just a worse version of Kid because it requires the board setup. You do need to not only have 2 East Blue characters on board to begin with, but you also need to rest them, meaning you can't attack with them. And while you can rest cards the turn you play them, if you're playing them, you're not going to have as many Dawn to pump up Kuro to make him as threatening as Kid. As well, the discard for Kid, which Kuro doesn't have, so you're not actually minusing an advantage. Because you can discard a card with 0 counter, the discard might not even affect you all that much. So my knee-jerk reaction is kind of being unimpressed. It's very similar to Kid, but not in a way that I think is meaningful. Though I do think, provided you have decent board setup already, the forced resting of a 5 or less is actually pretty decent. Next, we have the Arlong leader, who is green and yellow, so dual color 5k slash attribute for life, whose effect is Dawn 2. When attacking, you may pay 1. Play up to 1 character with a cost of 4 or less with trigger from your hand. This just seems terrible. Because, first off, it needs to have a trigger, and yes, being a part of yellow means you might be running a lot of trigger cards to begin with. At the same time, from the little of yellow I've seen, it doesn't seem like there's going to be that much overlap with green and yellow for East Blue and the Big Mom Pirates. But also, you are only really saving 1 Dawn, and yes, you get to attach the 2 to it, so it's not dissimilar from Doflamingo. But on the other hand, Doflamingo was a free +1 because this has to be played from hand, and also it has the restriction of being a trigger. So this really, and also while you do have access to the 2 colors, you have 1 less life. So in the same vein as Kuro kind of being a worse Kid, this really is just a worse Doflamingo in pretty much every respect. So this just seems, unless I'm missing something, this just seems truly terrible. But if I'm wrong, please comment down below. Next, we have Alvida, a 1/3 strike attribute, counter 1k. Just your usual vanilla stat line, not much to say. Then we have Gin, who is a rare. Very funny choice, I gotta say. Who is a 4 cost 5k striker, counter 1000. On play, if your leader has the East Blue type, rest 2 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. So I think this is pretty funny with we're kind of seeing a clear overlap with forcing rest of your opponent's cards, but I'm not that impressed with that solely because your opponent can just attack with cards, so they could just be rest anyways. Yes, you can use this on cards your opponent has just played, so they don't have the chance to rest themselves yet. So you're kind of going to be playing this seems like it's going to be a pseudo control deck where you tap your opponent's characters before they have a chance to attack and then swing into them. That's, I think, the vibe that I'm getting thus far. And then just the alt art, they kind of went off with this. They really made Gin look a lot more menacing than he really ever was presented as. This is some sick art. Next, we have our first SR being Creed 6 K7, 6 cost 7k, range, no counter, East Blue and Krieg Pirate typing. On play, trash 1 from your hand, KO up to 2 of your opponent's characters that are rested with a cost of 4 or less, and Dawn 1, this gets double attack. This is pretty decent. It is a 1 for 2, which is a decent trade-off. Yes, they need to be rested, but as we can see, resting your opponent's characters isn't a problem, and as we've seen from previous green support, it won't be because of cards like Nekomamushi and Izo. As well, being able to have double attack on a decent statted card is never bad, because with 1 Dawn, it becomes an 8k, 2 it becomes a 9, so it easily hits those numbers. As well, it does have an ability outside of the double attack, so you don't even need to just be here for the double attacking. And then I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like the base rare art for this. I think the posing is a lot more dynamic. I like the guns a lot more than his weird face and the shield, but that doesn't really matter. Next, we have Kuro Obi, who is a 4 cost 3k strike attribute, counter 1000, Fishman, East Blue, and Arlong crew typing. On play, if your opponent has the East Blue type, rest up to one of your opponent's characters and trigger play this card. The first thing of note is it has a trigger effect, so it does at least overlap with Arlong as well, because um, this card is very similar to Izo. While it has less counter and costs more, the fact that you can rest anything is actually quite decent. And yeah, I think this is definitely worth running, especially in Arlong, because it has the trigger, so you can play this for functionally 3 instead of 4. So I think this is pretty decent. Next, we have Sham, 3 cost 4k slash attribute, counter 1000, East Blue and Black Cat Pirate typing. If your leader has the East Blue Pirate type, rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 2 or less, and if you don't have a Butchie in play, play up to 1 Butchie from your hand. I think this is pretty decent. Um, in a way, it's it's both better and worse than Nekomamushi. It costs more and it only hits a 2 or less, so it really depends on how much that 2 versus 3 cost matters. But if we end up wanting to play Butchie, being able to potentially cheat something out as well does make this quite decent. Next, we have Django, who is a 4 cost 6k special attribute, no counter, East Blue and Black Cat Pirate typing. On play, choose one of the following effects, so it is modal. Set up to one of your leader or characters with East Blue typing of 6 or less active, um, or rest in this character and up to one of your opponent's characters. So I think this is decent. You can set Kuro as active for free, which is already pretty good. It does cost 5, but you at least get the body out of it. And because of how it's both of these are worded, theoretically you could use Kuro's effect as well. You could put 2 Dawn on Kuro, swing 7, use Kuro's effect, pay 3, restand, swing 7, play Django with the last 5 of your Dawn, and then stand Kuro, swing 7, which doesn't actually seem that bad. But also, having the ability to rest one of your opponent's characters is definitely not bad either. I'm not sure how often you're going to be doing it solely because you do need to rest itself, but the fact that you have the option on top of an already pretty decent ability makes this quite good. Next, we have Chu, 4 cost 3k ranged attribute, counter 1000, Fishman, East Blue, Arlong crew typing. On play, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. Trigger, play this card. So Kuro, Obi, and Chu definitely have the overlap where you're going to want to play them sequentially. The trigger means you can use it off of Arlong. So I think it's pretty decent that we're getting Trigger Tribal in the game, because Trigger seems to be from a lot of the deck lists we've seen, people don't run too many triggers, so I'm glad that triggers are actually becoming a bit relevant in the game. This seems quite decent. I don't like the cost, so I'm not sure how much you would be running this outside of an Arlong deck, solely because a card like X Drake exists, where despite costing, I believe, 2 more, I believe the rare Drake from set 1 is a 5 cost, it costs 1 more rather, but also comes with 6k extra. And I think that and while it also doesn't have a trigger, I think in any not Arlong deck, you'd still rather lose the trigger and pay 1 more for twice the power. Next, we have Nami, who is a 2/2, counter 1000, East Blue, and Arlong crew typing. So I'm glad that at least Arlong is getting its own deck. On play, check top 5, reveal a green East Blue other than herself, add to hand, bottom the rest, trigger play itself. Already very, very good. It's your standard searcher, and for 1 cost extra, you can just uh, you get the trigger, and in a color, assuming you are playing the green yellow Arlong in a color that actually cares about triggers, makes this quite good. So this is a solid card. Next, we have Pearl, which very odd choice for a character and a very odd choice for a character to get great art. 2 cost, 2k, strike attribute, counter 1000, East Blue Krieg Pirate typing, who has blocker. Your typical low cost blocker, already quite good. Then we have Buggy, 3/5, 0 counter, East Blue Buggy Pirate that cannot be KO'd in battle with slash attributes. I think it's fine. Um, I'm actually lying, I don't think it's fine, because while the protection is not bad, it only works on slashers, and against non-slashers, you'd just rather have a regular vanilla because they come with a counter, so this just isn't worth it. Next, we have Hotron, who is a 4 cost 4k counter 2000. Glad Arlong is getting one of those. Fishman, East Blue Arlong Crew. Trigger, if your leader is an East Blue, play this card. I think it's fine. It has the 2k counter, so you're already going to be running it. But outside of that, it's a vanilla with not great vanilla stats. And the trigger to play this card doesn't matter if you're going to be running it for the 2k counter. So, I mean, it's good for having the 2 counter, but I just don't think you're ever going to be playing it. Then we have Butchie, which pairs with Sham, 4 cost 5k slash attribute, counter 1000, East Blue and Black Cat Pirate typing, on play, KO up to one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 2 or less. So this pairs perfectly with Sham, who rests cards with a cost of 2 or less. So you play Sham, rest something, cheat out Butchie, and kill something, which is a great combo, and it's a decent stat line. Having the counter is already good, so I think this is quite solid and definitely worth playing. Lastly, for characters, we have Momu, vanilla, so 2/4, counter 1000, animal, and East Blue. Nothing to say. Feel like we could have given it a trigger at some loss just to make it work with Arlong, but I mean, it's fine. On to the events, we have a 3 cost out of the bag, East Blue Black Cat Pirate type. Rest one of your East Blue characters, set one of your Kuro as active, and trigger KO up to one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 3 or less. This is honestly fantastic. It's another option on top of Django. Just to restand your leader as well. You can use this because it is the same cost in place of the Kuro, so you could still give Kuro 2, swing 7, out of the bag, swing 7, Django, swing 7. So this is a great card for Kuro as the leader. Yeah, really nothing else to say. It means that it's a way of effectively using Kuro's effect without having the board presence already there, so that's good. Next, we have Tooth Attack, a 1 cost Fishman East Blue Arlong Pirate Crew typing. You may rest one of your East Blue type characters, KO up to one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 3 or less. Trigger, play one character with a cost of 4 or less with trigger from your hand. I mean, it's fine. It kind of turns all of your cards into ways of KOing tap down characters, but again, you need to be tapping them down first. And the trigger isn't phenomenal, if I'm being honest, because you need to play 4 costed triggers from hand. But for a 1 cost, this is a pretty decent event. Next, we have MH5, another 1 cost event, East Blue Krieg Pirate. Main, rest up to 2 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 2 or less. Trigger, rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. This is actually pretty decent solely because of how many low cost blockers there are. Even if your opponent only has 1, paying 1 to rest a blocker is already quite good. So this is definitely, I think, a solid card to consider for aggressive plays. And lastly, for our green cards, we have 1/2 Django, 1 cost East Blue Black Cat Pirate typing. Main, rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 1 or less, then up to one of your opponent's characters, then when up to one of your characters, gains 1k power during this turn. Trigger, rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. So pretty similar to the cards that we've seen thus far. It's a low cost way of resting an opponent's character, and you can pump up a card. You can use this in Kuro to give him a bit of power and potentially resting something that is low costed, so that's pretty decent. I'm actually surprised because none of these events have a defense on them, so you're going to be running older defensive events like your Punk Gibsons if you want to run defensive events. Final thoughts. I'm honestly really disappointed by green, which, I mean, to be fair, it got some great support the past 2 sets, so maybe it deserved a slap on the wrist. But none of these are really speaking to me. Kuro just kind of seems like a little bit of a worse version of Kid, which is already kind of getting a bit knocked down just because of other cars being able to answer the 8 cost wall. The only way like Arlong, it unless you're like how unless Yellow, as we might come to see soon, has some massive ways of going for game. Arlong doesn't have any ways of killing. Kuro is decently aggressive, but it's a very leader centric deck. And while there are ways of resting, it just doesn't seem like it'll be worth it because if your opponent has enough blockers set up or can just multi attack enough, unless there's something I'm missing, it just doesn't seem that impressive, to be honest. I think it's better than your Magellans, like from set two, but I really don't think this is going to be doing much. And as somebody who likes green, I don't see a reason really to ignore Kid for this deck. But again, I very well might be wrong. I'm doing my mostly knee jerk reactions. I haven't seen many of these cards yet. So if there's something I'm missing, please let me know down in the comments below. And I'm absolutely happy to be wrong once we start getting tournament results. But thank you all for watching, and we'll go over the next colors in the following videos. See you in the next one.